Stop me if you've heard this before. The Seattle Mariners payroll is expected to increase next season. Yeah, sounds familiar, doesn't it? Just like it was going into the season of 2024. At the very end of 23, they said they expected payroll to rise, and then all of a sudden, Johnny Boy Stanton pulled the rug out from underneath Jerry Dipoto and co. by talking about the regional sports network problems that the Mariners and a lot of other teams around baseball were having, and therefore payroll hardly went up. In fact, it only went up $5 million. The payroll at the end of the 2023 season was right around $141 million, and in 2024, it sits at about $148 million. So payroll went up about $6-7 million or so. Not enough, obviously, for the Mariners to be able to do anything this season. We saw what they had to do last year to get rid of some contracts. They had to get rid of Eugenio Suarez's contract. They didn't bring back Teoscar Hernandez, and they traded away Jared Kelenic along with Evan White and Marco Gonzalez to try to kill off some of their money as well. So as we sit here at the end of another disappointing season, we are once again being told payroll is going to go up. We weren't told how much, but it is supposed to go up. One problem is that Jerry Dipoto already mentioned that it will go up significantly just because of the players that you have in-house, the guys that are already here. He mentioned how a lot of the guys that they think are good for this team are already here. Does that mean the Mariners are going to try to run it back in 2025? Let's take a look at their payroll, what kind of money guys are making next year, and how this is going to affect the 2025 team. First things first, let's take a look at guys that are going to be making more money in 2025. Julio Rodriguez was due we'll call it $12 million in 2024. And in 2025, that's going to go up to we'll call it $20 million for Julio Rodriguez. Mitch Garver is going to see a bit of a pay increase as well. He's going to go up to $12.5 million, up from $10.5 million in 2024. Victor Robles, of course, signed an extension with the Mariners. He'll make about $4 million as well. But where the money really kicks in for the Seattle Mariners is all the guys they have here in arbitration. Some of them expected to make a pretty penny, namely Logan Gilbert, George Kirby, Cal Raleigh, and Randy Arozarena. In an article by the Seattle Times, these are the projected arbitration numbers for those guys. Randy Arozarena, $10 to $12 million, Logan Gilbert, $7 to $8, Cal Raleigh, $5 million, Josh Rojas, $4 million, and George Kirby, $4 million. The total estimate there is $30 to $33 million just in arbitration numbers. You add that on top of the guaranteed payroll for a lot of these guys already, and that is about $120 to $125 million for this team so far. Then the guys that aren't eligible yet for arbitration brings you up about $5 million. That puts the total estimate for the 2025 payroll as of September 30th at $125 to $128 million. Now you may notice there's not a couple of names on there. Obviously guys like Justin Turner and Jimmy Garcia are free agents at the end of the year, so you don't have to worry about their money. Although there has been a lot of talk about bringing Justin Turner back, so maybe you do expect to have his salary on the books. I'm not sure what he'll be looking for in free agency this year, but he does plan to play in 2025. So if the Mariners want him back, maybe like $7-8 million for Justin Turner. Obviously, one of the big ones is Jorge Polanco. He does have a club option next year for $12 million. The Mariners probably are not going to pick that up. They will probably decline that option, meaning that $12 million would be off the book from Jorge Polanco. There are also guys that are candidates to be non-tendered in Luis Urias and Sam Haggerty. Both guys are going to be making not a ton of money, but a decent amount in arbitration next year. Both guys have been pretty much worthless to this team in 2024, so both guys will probably be non-tendered. So let's just say this team is at $128 million as it stands right this very second, going into next year. That's assuming that nobody gets extended. So Cal Raleigh, Logan Gilbert, etc., those guys don't see extensions. They do just get their arbitration numbers back. And the Mariners go into this offseason with a $128 million payroll. If they do plan on raising that payroll from what did I say, like 145 or 148 or whatever it was this year, that leaves you with about $20 to $25 million just to get back to the payroll that you were already at this year. And then to add on to that, who knows how much they're going to be willing to do, but I would say I wouldn't expect it to reach over like 160, which is like their high watermark ever. Their highest watermark in 2018, I believe, was $160 million. In fact, in the article by Jude and Divish, they say, given the Mariners' ongoing uncertainty surrounding Root Sports, the regional sports network player payroll is not expected to make a sizable increase for 2025. And their high watermark was $162 million back in 2018. As noted here, the contracts of Felix Cano, Kyle Seager, and Nelson Cruz, that's where all that money was being spent. One thing that I did find notable here is this quote from Jerry Dipoto. Last year, we had a pretty good feeling that there were a number of teams that were in a unique situation due to the RSN issues. I don't know how that's going to play out this season or what it's going to mean for other teams in the league. The only thing I do know going into this offseason is how it's going to play out for us, and it's not going to be nearly the concern that it was this past year. Awesome. I'm really happy to hear that the regional sports network BS that John Stanton used last year is not expected to be a problem in 2025. That's good to hear, I guess. But going into 2025, what does that mean for additions? Because let's say they can add roughly $10 million to what they had at the end of this season. That leaves the Mariners from $125 million, which is what they're at right now, to about $155. Leaves them about $30 million to play with in terms of free agency and trades this offseason. So that kind of pulls you out of the Juan Soto, which we knew that was never going to happen anyway. But like Juan Soto, maybe even Willie Adames and Alex Bregman talk going into the 2025 season. In terms of free agency, that doesn't leave them with a whole lot of wiggle room because the class is not that deep on position players. And if you do bring back Justin Turner, well, there's probably $8 or $9 million of that $30 million that you have to play with gone right away. It's important to note here that the Seattle Mariners in 2024 finished about 16th in payroll in all of baseball, with a massive difference between them and the 15th spot with the San Diego Padres at $171 million. $171 million would be higher than the Mariners have ever had in the history of their team. Obviously, you have the Mets up here at $317 million, those absolute psychos. Although, hey, if you watched the games yesterday against the Braves, you know the Mets knew what they were doing. Assuming the Mariners' payroll does go to that $155 million I was talking about, they'll probably still be in the bottom half of the MLB, which they shouldn't be. Right ahead of the Chicago White Sox and the Colorado Rockies, both 100-loss baseball teams. It sucks that we have to talk about this shit every single year. That we have to talk about payroll every single year because John Stanton and Chris Larson and the ownership group are too cheap to put this team out there. This team had 2.5 million fans enter their gates in 2024. And yet here we are, sitting here at the very beginning of the offseason, being told, oh, payroll's going to go up, but that's what we said last season, yeah, also, but hey, trust me, bro. Like, I don't know. Obviously we'll believe it when we see it, right? And it's not to say that a big payroll is necessarily always means you're going to win the World Series. Like, look at the Mets. Again, they had to fight for a wild card spot, and they have the highest payroll in baseball. Money spent does not always equal playoffs. However, it helps. It does help. For this team moving forward, we've talked about it a little bit, and that is that the positions of need, being that the infield, probably second base and third base specifically, are not going to be easily filled in this free agent market. And in terms of guys that you can afford, right? Because you're not going to go out there and blow all $30 million on one guy like Alex Bregman or probably even Willie Adames, although I think Adames would be a really good fit. But in terms of guys that you can afford, there's really not much out there that's going to be better than what you had this season, which sucks. I mean, the Mariners in terms of F4, I think we're fourth, right? At third base. Which, thank you, Ty Dang Gonzalez, for letting me know that during our 999 challenge. That blew my mind a little bit. But, like, are you going to be able to do better than Jorge Polanco on the free agent market this year? I don't know. Are you going to be able to do better than Josh Rojas in the free agent market this year? I don't know. Not with the constraints that you're being put under, even though they're not constraints because payroll's going to go up. If you are not okay with crossing the boundary of what the team was at before in 2018 with $162 million spent on payroll, then I don't see a feasible way that you can make meaningful upgrades at those positions, which is why Jerry DiPoto said, the team that we have here, we feel good about. Yep, we do. Meaning that maybe the only position that they mess around with is second base because Jorge Polanco, there's no way they're going to pick up that option. So that means they're probably going to roll with the team they have right now, which is unacceptable. You cannot go into 2025 with the same team that you had in 2024. Again, the outfield is set, and they were like, oh, well, Dan Wilson came in, and the team did really well while Dan was here. That's great. That's awesome. For 30 games, this team played good baseball. That's really cool. But unfortunately, for the majority of this season, this team sucked. And we all knew it. This offense sucked. Sure, I agree that the outfield should be set. Julio, Victor, Randy, and Luke Raley. The outfield should be set. Catcher, you're set with Cal Raleigh. You should not trade anybody from your starting pitching staff. Bullpen needs a little bit of help, and then you probably need help at second base, third base, and honestly, possibly shortstop. I am not sold that we should keep JP, but that's for another video. Joe and I talked a little bit about the comments by Jerry DiPoto in this video on the screen right now. I want you guys to check that one out next. I appreciate you guys watching this one, and go Mariners.